it's in the questioning where actually I find the most comfort and safety.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Coming Clean Podcast. This is your host, Peter O. Estevez. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have none other today than Miki Agrawal. Miki is a social entrepreneur and a disruptive innovator. Hello, Miki. Welcome to Coming Clean Podcast.
Thank you for having me. So happy to be here with you.
Well, I'm excited to have you. You know, I follow you for a while, as I mentioned to you before we hit that record button. And I really love the stuff that you've been doing in your entrepreneur journey. But I want to start at the beginning. I want to start on that day, many years ago, almost 20 plus years ago, or right at 20 years, 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
It forever changed your life. Tell us a little bit about that, and let's start right there.
Yeah. So I went to college in upstate New York. I went to Cornell University, and the place where everyone was going to work after college was New York City. And so it felt like the obvious thing to do, even if we were from Montreal, Canada. And all of our friends were moving to New York, and we, at the time didn't really know exactly. When I say we, I'm always talking about my twin sister and me. It's always been we. People are always like, who's we? And I'm like, no, me and my twin sister, we do everything together. And so we just said to ourselves, like, let's just move to New York too and figure out what we're going to do with our lives. And we had gotten kind of jobs in investment banking. I got a job at Deutsche Bank, and she got a job at CIBC World Markets as investment bankers. And we were like totally not finance people. We were not, we weren't finance people, put it that way. And we were, every investment bank every single year hires like one or two liberal arts communications type majors just to kind of round out the kind of incoming class, and everyone else is hardcore finance people. And my sister and I both got jobs in investment banking somehow, being the non-finance people. And so it was just a funny beginning of just feeling like we were fish out of water. But then we moved to New York City 10 days before 9/11. And our subway stop every single morning is 2 World Trade Center. And, my subway stop every morning was 2 World Trade Center. My sister worked in Midtown. So I would basically get off 2 World Trade Center, and I would off the subway, I would walk upstairs to my girlfriend's office on the 100th floor, but I would meet her in the cafe. She worked on the 100th floor, and we would meet in the cafe in 2 World Trade, and we would have tea every morning. I would walk across the street to my office, and that's it. And 9/11 happens. She worked on the 100th floor, so 700 people in her office died on that day. Wow. 2 people in my office died on that day. And if you can imagine, like, going to work, like nothing happened, like nothing's going on, to then literally like not coming home to your children it was like out of a bad movie. And it was just a wild moment in time when, and my girlfriend, Laura, happened to go downstairs like to get coffee right before the plane hit. So she was spared, thank God. And it was the first and only day in my life that I slept through my alarm clock. It was the only day in my life that I slept through my alarm clock. To this day, I'm the lightest sleeper. That was the only single day in my life that I did not wake up. And so it was just one of those like, oh my God moments where I woke up and I thought I was just late for work. But then I just turned the TV on because no one was picking up the phones, and there it was. And it was sort of in that moment. It was in that moment that I realized that the mystery of life is that you just never know when it's going to end, and for me, like, the time was now to make every moment count. After that moment, I was lucky to be 22. I mean, lucky in that unlucky day, but I was 22 to, instead of being 32, 42, where I was like in a job that I just kind of got, but it was sort of that wake up call to really, really turn the light on behind my eyes, because who knows what's going to happen. And so, yeah. And so I kind of wrote down 3 things I wanted to do with my life. The first was to play soccer professionally. The second was to make movies. And the third was to start a business. And sort of all those things actually happened. And then I had my eureka moment to start my first business, which is a longer story on how I got there, but I'll stop there for now.
And we'll get to that. We'll get to that. There's something that you said in one of the interviews before, that from the day we graduate college to the day we die, we have
20, there's only 20. Yes.
Right, 21,000 days. And you really, really have taken that seriously and really kind of started living out life to your best, right? Really enjoying life and doing the things that you wanted to do. Okay. But the most interesting thing is that you became, from going into finance to getting into some very taboo businesses. Okay. Businesses that had not been disrupted in many, many years. The 4 P's: the pizza, the periods, the pee, and the poo.
Yeah.
So take us to that journey. Why those businesses, and how was it that each one of those ideas was born?
Mm-hmm. Well, so actually, in my first book, Do Cool Shit, I wrote down 3 questions that I asked myself before starting any business, and that sort of those questions really helped me choose what I wanted to do in my life as an entrepreneur. And so the questions are: the first question is, what sucks in my world?
What sucks in your world?
What sucks in my world? It has to be a real pain point that I'm struggling with, that I haven't found a good viable solution that supports my world, my experience. So for example, when I first started Wild, it was Slice back in the day, but I rebranded it to Wild. My pizza restaurants, where I still have 17 years later today. We're going tonight. I'm taking a bunch of my friends. I'm so excited. I had, at the time, couldn't eat gluten. I stopped eating like all kinds of processed foods because it would just make me sick and make me bloated, make me just have gas. It was just bad for me. Like anytime I ate pizza, the dairy, the gluten, the sugar, and the processed foods just weren't supporting my system. And I loved pizza, and pizza is like America's favorite pastime,
Sure.
And yet I couldn't, at the time in 2004, couldn't find any alternative pizza that was made with organic, local, farm to table, gluten-free ingredients. I mean, this was before any of those terms or anything cool. I mean, the only places you found any of those types of products were in like local Birkenstock wearing, like markets that are those little
style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it was just like, that was a eureka moment for me, where I was like, I want to support a problem in my life. So what sucks in my world? Not being able to eat my favorite food, pizza. Then with my period, like every time I had my period, I would have like leaks and stains and messy experiences and just constant like stained sheets and my mattress. I mean, like every single thing was such a frustrating experience. So what sucked in my world? Having a very heavy period sucked in my world. And
so that's number one. What sucks in your world? What's the second question that you ask yourself?
Yes. The second question is, does it suck for a lot of people?
Okay.
So does it suck for a lot of people? So, 1 in 5 Americans are gluten-free now. 1 in 5 Americans are lactose intolerant. In fact, it's everyone to a certain degree are somewhat intolerant to dairy. And, there's just a massive market of people who care about eating local, organic, farm table, seasonal now. Back in the day, it was very difficult. But just from those 2 stats, like 20% plus 20, it's 40, that's a lot of people. That's a big market that I could support and serve. So what sucks in my world? Does it suck for a lot of people? So my current company, Tushy, what sucked in my world? Having like a hyperthyroid condition, which one of the side effects was pooping up to 8 times per day, which was like really like annoying. And so I had to jump in the shower after a while because my butt was so raw and in pain. And so a bidet really changed my life. Like having to, instead of using dry paper that you smear dry paper around, you use actually fresh water. That really changed my life. It changed my existence. It cured all my redness down there. And it was perfect. And then I thought about, wow, people with hemorrhoids, chronic UTIs, chronic bacterial vaginosis, chronic GI issues, post-pregnant women who have very crazy hemorrhoids, like all kinds of people have fissures, like there's people have mobility issues. There's such a huge pain point for so many people. It doesn't such suck for me. It sucks for many millions of people in the world. So the third question is, I think the most important, which is, can I be passionate about this issue, cause, or community for a really long time? My favorite saying is, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. So often I talk to aspiring entrepreneurs and they're like, yeah, I want to start a company. I want to sell it next year and then make $100 million. And you're just like, dude, that's like winning the lottery. It doesn't, like, that's 0.00001% of companies that do that. 90% of companies fail, and so you can't go into a business thinking that you're just starting it to sell it, because that already it's coming out of alignment with who you are, and you're going to lose interest in it very quickly. You're going to lose the devotion that it requires to actually start and launch a business very quickly. And so, can I be passionate about this issue, cause, or community for a really long time is such an integral question. It does take 10 years to be an overnight success. It is a very, very real challenge. The ups are high, but the lows are low. And so to really ask myself, can I be passionate about food for the rest of my life? Absolutely. Can I be passionate about women's issues and solving for the thing that creates human life, a woman's period? Yes, for the rest of my life. Can I be passionate about saving millions of trees from being flushed down the toilet, for elevating the human experience out of the 1800s when toilet paper was introduced? And can I support the global sanitation crisis that is affecting 3 billion people on the planet? My answer is absolutely yes. And so for the rest of my life. And so, like that, those are the questions. What sucked in my world? Does it suck for a lot of people? Can I be passionate about this issue, cause, or community for a really long time? If the three are resounding yeses, then I'm doing it. And a lot of times I have so many ideas, but they don't answer those three questions, and I just don't move forward.
You dismiss them. You dismiss.
Yeah, that's right. That's
right. And what's very interesting, other than the pizza selection, okay, other than that particular space, the other three are spaces that, number one, have not been touched in years. I mean,
right.
Hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay, but they're also taboos in the sense that they're not a conversation piece at a dinner table, right? So,
right.
How are you able to enter a space that is not a taboo? Okay, although I mean, most women have an issue with their periods. We all have an issue with the poo and the pee. Okay, but they're not conversation pieces. So, one, how were you able to build a space and build a team, okay, that had the same vision as you did in order to move them forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have, again, I kind of developed a thesis around how to shift culture using an innovative product, and it's a 3-pronged thesis. And so the idea is that, like a tripod, a camera tripod, to remain strong, it needs to have a foundation. I think if it's only 2 of the 3, it doesn't work. If it's 1 of the 3, it doesn't work. It needs all 3 prongs, in my opinion, to truly challenge an existing sort of notion and a status quo thinking, a conditioned way of doing something into a completely new way of doing something. And so the 3-pronged thesis is, the first thing, and I do it from the lens of product. So the first thing is a best-in-class 1-of-1 product. So 1-of-1 innovation, something that really solves for a need, like, whether it's a gluten-free pizza, whether it's a period proof underwear, whether it's a modern bidet that attaches your toilet in 10 minutes, without plumbing or electrical, makes it super easy to install. It's affordable. It's not those expensive Japanese toilets, that kind of thing. So it has to be a 1-of-1 innovation that serves this new market, right? Wow. So while bidets existed, all over the world, in America, people were like, boudet, they don't even know how to pronounce it,
Right.
And so they don't know what it is. They think it's spraying poopy water. They think it's water pulling from the bowl or the tank, which none of those are true. It's just a very unknown thing that people just haven't thought about. And so the question is, how do you make something that people haven't even thought about relevant again, or relevant in this society now? And so for me, it's having just either a seamless, easy, best-in-class 1-of-1 innovation that's just the best. Like, that's kind of baseline. It sounds like duh, but it is. A lot of people don't actually create a product that people would use and that they would use. It's like all of my products, I use I use Thinx every single month on my period. In fact, I use them when I'm not on my period because they're so comfortable. I use my bidet multiple times every single day. Tushy is like my life, you know, and my pizza, like anytime I'm in New York, I'm like, I can't wait to go there. My mouth is watering just thinking about it, you know? And so it's like that energy of like, I desperately want it. And if I know I want it, then it's definitely an innovation that solves for a deep need. You know, it solves my problem, and it sucks for a lot of people. And therefore that's why they've been around for a long time. The second prong of the thesis is considered artful design across every touch point of your brand. And I think a lot of companies, like, they try to say so much in like a piece of a Facebook ad, and all of a sudden it just crowds the thing, and you just crowds the ad, and you don't even end up reading any of it because it's too much. For me, like, you know, like, one of my favorite things, if you ask any of my team, my favorite 2 words on my team is breathing room. Does it have breathing room where I can make my own interpretation? So if you look at any of our Tushy stuff or our Think stuff or any of the things I've done, there's so much breathing room in the imagery that we offer, that we put out in the world, whether it's a Facebook ad, an Instagram ad, our website, whether it's, you know, our packaging. There's just so much empty space around the product or the artful idea, the concept, because the way I always think about it is, if you can bring your own interpretation to something you're looking at, then all of a sudden you feel a deeper kinship to that. Right. And so psychologically, you're like, oh, I just interpreted that in my own way because it gave me the space to do that and the safety to do that. Then I feel a kinship to this brand. And so for me, like, considered artful design across every touch point of your brand, like really thinking through what is the most pertinent things I can say and create enough breathing room around for the person to be able to look back and reflect themselves in what they're looking at. Because at the end of the day, that's all we really want to be doing, is helping people reflect back themselves, or
Absolutely.
their most brilliant selves. And then the third prong, which I think ties it all together, is accessible, relatable language across every touch point of your brand. And the idea, like, oftentimes when we're inventing something new, especially if it's a new innovation, a new invention, and we want to show everyone how technically smart we are, it's just, it gets over people's heads. And it's so confusing. It's like, wait, what is that? And so oftentimes, like, inventors, entrepreneurs, they're way too academic, way too clinical, way too medical. You know, they're just way too heady about what they're trying to put out in the world, and they're no longer relating to people like you and me. And so what we did that, and I made that mistake plenty of times, just why I learned this the hard way and the best way, which is through practice. And what I learned is, you know, when I used to text my best friends about what I'm doing, like, oh my God, this is what I'm building, this is what I'm doing, the way I texted my friends really hit home. It really related. Like, they got it much faster than me trying to be perfect in how I was describing something to a potential customer who was going to buy my product, hopefully, versus like texting my friend with all my excitement and all my silliness and my funniness. You text your friends, you're being kind of silly and kind of not perfect, and you're being just yourself, authentic, genuinely authentic, and just excited, or whatever, like, that emotion is that's true to you. That's what you're feeling. And like, when it comes to like sharing a new product or sharing a new idea with somebody, can you do it in a way that makes the other person feel smart, feel like they're part of the story? It feels like it's accessible, feels like they're texting their best friend, like, feels so familiar to them that they're like, wow, this makes so much sense. Like, you're talking to me like me, and therefore it must be easy to do because I feel such a kinship to the way you're talking to me. And so, like, you couple the way you're talking to me in the right accessible language in a way that feels like a friend, and it feels like, oh, it's a person behind this brand. It's not just a brand. It's people. It's actual little gnomes working behind this brand to make it something. So it's accessible, relatable language coupled with the right, beautiful, artful design. Like, the other thing I'd love to say is, like, you know, when you walk into, like, you know, when people saw, for example, one of my Tushy ads, one of my Thinx ads, they'd be like, wow, that's so beautiful and artful. And then they'd be like, whoa, they're talking about poop. They're talking about periods.
Right.
But their first interpretation was, wow, that's beautiful. And so just because their first interpretation was that, their heart cracked open a little bit to accept some new information. Then all of a sudden they're getting talked with in a way that feels like you're talking to your best friend. So their heart cracks open even more. So now it's like, I just looked at art I'm feeling you're talking to me. Okay, now you're talking about poop your periods. Like I now feel opened to receive what you're trying to tell me that's new and different. You're not trying to shout something down my throat. You're not trying to like use all these tactics to make me buy it. You're just giving me art, space, safety, accessible language, familiarity that I feel like I now can relate to you differently in a way that I want to try it, so it's been 17 years of trial and error from my part, starting as an entrepreneur at 24, 25 years old till now, to really, really dissect this human psychology of the buying experience but through the lens of deep authenticity. It's like, what would make me want to open up to something completely new, different, weird? And then the people around me, and then it goes in that kind of from that concentric circle, but it always starts.
I love it, Miki. But how did you develop that mindset? Because you're not your generation, you're millennial. No,
I'm right there.
That's a millennial, right? So I mean, you're not the Uber generation. You're not the, which is much mindset, right? Airbnb, a lot of those disrupted industries or companies that develop out of the technology generation, right? Out of that boom. But you're a little bit before that, yet you have a very innovative mindset. Did you develop that mindset, or was that a mindset that you had always had since you were young?
Well, I mean, I will say, like, I grew up with a Japanese mother and an Indian father who both super open-minded. I mean, they married each other in 1974 against all odds. Interracial marriages were not a thing in 1974. And so they themselves thought disruptively, long before we were, and we grew up in Montreal, Canada. So we grew up in French Montreal to a Japanese mother, Indian father, where we were exposed to all the cultures at once. And so I think we got very lucky in that we were exposed to questioning, and we were able to see like a different problem being answered in sort of slightly different ways, and to recognize that we can question everything in our lives. We can, the Indians think about this one way, the Japanese think about this another way, the French think about it this way, the English think about it this way, but all the same things. There must be an opportunity to question it from all the different ways whenever. So I think the idea of questioning everything is really important. And to be able to, I think that was the gift I was given as a young person from my parents, and to the permission to question everything. And also having an identical twin has been such an absolute game changer in my life, to have somebody cheerleading me my whole entire life, being like a positive form of competition, right? My best friend, someone I can go to the lunchroom with in high school and not feel ostracized. I always had a buddy. So that cheerleaded me. So I think that there definitely is that, but I think a lot of it is learned in the world of just deeply questioning everything. And we all can do that if we decided to do that,
Absolutely. Let's talk about the periods. Okay. And Thinx was born out of a three-legged race with your sister.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So tell us a story and tell us exactly what it is and how you solve the period issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to get to talking to more about Tushy, just because that's my current.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah. So let me share that story, because it's more relevant to me. I mean, they're both relevant to me. The Thinx story, a powerful story around the importance of playfulness and how important it is that when you put yourself in a position of playfulness, right, incredible ideas can come through. So can sort of manifest. So just for a couple of sentences around that with Thinx, is that the idea for Thinx was born during a three-legged race championship title, where my sister and I were defending our championship title in the three-legged race. And my sister started her period in the middle of the race, and we kind of had to sprint to the finish line upstairs, tied to each other, and like in the bathroom as she was washing out the blood from her bathing suit bottoms. That's when the idea hit. And so, I think it's so important to be in states of play all the time, because it's in those places where the best ideas come out. Thinx is valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, and that came from just a three-legged race championship experience while playing. So that's like, oftentimes we think that when we get into business, we have to be so serious, and we have to like get serious as we grow up and get our heads out of the cloud. And, I wrote my book, Disrupt Her, specifically about disrupting this notion of we have to get serious as we grow up, and we have to do things a certain way. And, the idea of disruptor is like question everything. In that questioning is where the magic comes through. And so, so with Tushy, for me, like what was so powerful was, again, like solving for my own problem and having a hyperthyroid condition where I lost, I was down to almost 100 pounds. It was very scary. My heart was palpitating out of my chest, was pooping up to 8 times a day. It was a very, very scary time in my life. And when I was able to really figure out this little, device that can, at least wash my butt and keep me soothed down there, how that really had a deep ripple effect in the rest of my life, and just being able to just be soothed. And then from that experience, Tushy was born, to really solve for the ridiculousness of toilet paper consumption, and the fact that toilet paper was brought to America in the late 1800s, and the way we wipe ourselves has not changed since the late 1800s. And the analogy I always give is, imagine if you jumped in your shower, didn't turn the water on, and just used dry toilet paper to wipe the dirtiest bits. Like, people would be like, you're crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're not, it's disgusting. You're so dirty. So like, why are we doing that to the dirtiest parts of our body is just a question. Like, why are we doing that? So let's ask that question. Let's see if there's a better answer. And I think we have not been given the permission to ask that question. We have not been given the permission to ask ourselves, wait, is there a better way to do this? Is there a better way to do that? Is there a better, like, the answer is yes to probably every single thing in our lives. But we just think, okay, well, I guess this is the way we do it. I'm just going to follow along. And I think like my book, Disruptor, or our community, my community of amazing friends, we call ourselves the Boom Spiral. And it's a group of questioners, like people who question societal, the way things are. Like, we question the way, like, why are we doing things this way? Like, let's challenge the existing structure of society and make it better, make it more palatable, make it more fun, make it more inviting, make it more like environmentally friendly, make it more like heart-centered, and actually opens us up in a different way. Like, let's question it all. And I think that is the most important thing. And I think with Tushy, that questioning of like, is there a better way for me? And I found a better way, and I brought that better way to the American market, was just, for me, another big, like, in French, I call it coup de foudre moment, like a aha moment, eureka moment, that the more we question, the more we can serve. That's it.
Right. And one of the things that you have done with every single one of your products in your companies, you have adopted the social consciousness. Not only how is this issue affecting today our normal consumer, but how is it affecting third world countries, other countries that have deeper issues with the problems that you are solving in the Western world. Okay, so tell us a little bit about that, and what contributions have you and your companies made to those other countries?
Yeah. So when I was 11 years old, my parents took out a $30,000 loan, which they took them 10 years to pay it back, to take us to India and Japan to visit our home countries, and their home countries. And that was sort of like the most important experience of my life, that really set me on like a different path of thinking. Like, I lived in like South Shore of Montreal, Canada, in the most like suburban, sweet, tree-lined street, like middle class, but safe environment. Going from that to India, where I would see, 9, 10, 11-year-old. I remember, I'll never forget seeing this one 11-year-old kid with elephantitis on his feet, dragging his feet through a train station in India, in Delhi. And I like remember like running to my dad and being like, "Daddy, where are his parents?" And my dad was like, they're abandoned. They don't have parents, because a lot of these kids, when they have problems, they just get abandoned. Right. And it broke me open to like, wait, what? Like, what? Like, the thought of being 11 and not having parents, and having to fend for myself, was so foreign to me. And so like that stayed with me for my whole life, so that when I became an entrepreneur, like I've always wanted to have a give back. So like everything that I sold, I wanted to serve with what I sold. And it was just sort of like, it's just like this, it's kind of a circular economy. Like what you give, what you get, you can give back, and it comes back and it goes back and it comes back. And it's sort of this, it's a very Indian philosophy of living, a sort of circular economy. And so I just thought that any business I start, there will be a give back. So for my restaurants with Wild, it was always serving local farms and really supporting local farms who were trying to survive locally. And that was our give back there, was really supporting local farms. With Thinx, it was supporting women in Africa to get access to menstrual pads and menstrual products to go back to school, because millions and millions of girls are dropping out of school because they stay home when they're on their periods. They don't have regular pads or anything to manage their periods. They end up missing school, and they end up just dropping out because they just get so far behind. Imagine missing 1 week of school every month. Like it's so hard to stay focused. And so they just drop out, and then there's huge ramifications on these communities when girls and women drop out of school. And so we've helped now, I think, over 500,000 girls go back to school. We've helped, thousands and thousands of women through my pee proof underwear product get fistula operations, where obstetric fistula is when a woman gives birth to somebody. Like my sister, for example, when she gave birth, she tore a little bit in her urinary canal and urethra. And it basically, like, one of the side effects, if you don't just stitch it up, you just end up peeing constantly down your leg forever. Right. And in many parts of the world, they just take these women who just gave birth and they throw them in these fistula camps to die. Wow. It's the most awful. And it's like they used to call the modern leprosy, but it's like something that can be completely cured by just having a little operation. And so we've helped thousands and thousands of women have operations to go back to their families and back to their communities and get them out of these fistula camps. And so that's been our give back for Icon now speaks. And then with Tushy, the global sanitation crisis affects 3 billion people around the planet. Almost a billion people don't have access to actually practice open defecation, where they poop outside. And when people practice open defecation, that poop goes into water streams. That water stream gets infected. And then when people drink out of the same water stream, they're getting sick, and then they're dying from dysentery. I mean, most of the deaths are coming from dysentery and water related issues. And so by just building out clean toilets, and not only just building out the clean toilets, but actually supporting the build out of these clean toilets by teaching the communities why they should go there. Hey, I'll give you a bar of soap if you use this toilet, this week. I'll give you minutes on your phone if you use this toilet for this week. So you can understand why these toilets are important. Because a lot of times these nonprofits throw in there, they just throw a toilet up and they leave. And look, we just built a toilet, but then nobody, like the community doesn't actually enroll and understand why they need it. So the toilet ends up becoming an even bigger cesspool of infection. Sure. So for what we've done is we've partnered with an organization called Samagra, and Samagra not only brings and builds the clean toilets, but then also teaches and trains, spends 6 months there training the community as to why these toilets are important. All of a sudden, in those 6 months, way less kids are getting sick. Way less parents are getting sick. It's way more livable. It's much less stinky. The water is much better. Everything in their lives improves, and they all see it with their own eyes, the deep improvement. And so then they adopt the toilet system into their communities. And so even if we're like, the global sanitation crisis affecting billions of people are dying, we still have to train these people on why they need it and why it's important and better for their communities. And so why we decide to support Samagra is because they spend 6 months per community. And what makes it important, it's not just a constant give back where they're just ad infinitum giving welfare type checks back to these communities. They're teaching these people why they need these toilets, and then they're empowering them, and they're saying, hey, each one of you have to pay $1.25 per family per month to keep this toilet clean, and you're going to hire local community members to have their job be keeping these toilets clean. And so it becomes a very they become self-sustaining, and then Samagra moves on to the next village. It's not like a welfare model. It's really it's a teach a man to fish model, feed him for a lifetime model. Yeah.
Love it. Miki, we talked about your journey entrepreneurship. We talked about the different businesses you have disrupted. I want to talk about a teachable moment in Wild, in the restaurant business. You know, you were operating the business for about 7 years, and you were not turning a profit until you brought a partner.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about, is it Wally, your partner?
Waleed, I'm seeing him tonight. He's my angel.
Let's talk about Wally and the teachable moment. Well, what was it? You know, you have a great mind. You're an innovator. You're creative. You're an inventor. You are the driving force behind all of your businesses. But where does the business end come in? The structure, we got to turn a profit, right? If we want to stay in business.
Absolutely.
So tell us, share with us a story about Wally, and then how you have gone into turning your companies into multi-million-dollar companies.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, the Waleed lesson was like the biggest lesson of my life, which literally impacted all of my businesses that followed. And I'm so grateful for this lesson. So my first business, my restaurant business, which I started in 2005, I was 25 years old. And it was like, I was just getting like straight up taken advantage of because I just didn't know what I was doing. And so every time I would leave my restaurant, our numbers would go down because our team was just pocketing the money and stealing from me. And it was just like crazy, the stuff that I experienced in those early days. And I didn't know how to set up systems, and I was learning how to do all of that. And I was still figuring it out. And what I knew I was good at was getting people to try it, was like doing the branding, doing the design, like the marketing, the PR, like really getting people to like adopt the vision of what Wild was. But I was not an operator. Like, I'm not a restaurateur. In fact, I never really cooked food before. Like, I didn't even know like how to cook, like before I started my restaurant, which was, naivete is kind of hilarious. Is definitely part of starting a business for sure. Right. So when I was sort of like, we were just barely surviving, I finally, I did manage to open a second restaurant with the money that we made, and bring it to life and rebrand it to Wild, and kind of just it was just my passion business, and it was giving me enough to live, but it wasn't like a runaway success. But then I remembered, I was just like, my last manager had stolen from me. We caught him. He was paying his restaurant. He had a restaurant next door, and he was paying his payroll of his restaurant with my money. And I was just so sad because we went to college together. I mean, it was like this awful experience. And I was just like, who can I trust in this world? Like, I'm just getting like, just constantly like, what is going on? And then finally I was like, oh, this just like, I was like, God, I'm at Wild. And then all of a sudden Waleed popped into my head. And I met Waleed like 8 years prior, building his restaurant with Moby, the singer, called Teeny. And he owned like 8 restaurants in the city. And I just was like, I just got a download. I'm like, I'm just gonna text him. And I was like, hey, Waleed, I'm thinking about bringing in a partner for my restaurant. I'd love for you to come by. It's called Wild. It's on this street. And he showed up, he rode his bike over literally like that afternoon. And we sat down. He's like, oh, your restaurant's name is Wild. My name is Waleed. Waleed, Wild Waleed. It's perfect. That was like his first thing. And then my second question to him, my first question to him was, Waleed, do you believe in karma? Do you believe in karma? Because I had been burned so much. So I just wanted to ask him that question. And he goes, oh my God, Miki, whenever I have a bad thought, a bicycle ran over my foot. and I was like, oh my God, you are my guy. And so it was in 2012 or 2013 was when I brought him on as my partner. And literally, not even kidding, within 1 week of him taking over the restaurant, our numbers doubled. Within 1 month, our numbers tripled. And I'd spent 7 years trying to make my restaurant work. Wow. And it was such a powerful lesson for me, where I was like, wow, like I focus on what I do best. And I literally let other people do what they do best. And by doing that, we focus on our zones of genius, and we can truly thrive. And so that lesson I took with Thinx and Tushy, my first person that I brought in were operators and operations people. And that completely shifted everything for me.
Wow. Wow. Miki, we have seen in the last 20 years, the world has been completely turned upside down, has been completely disrupted. I cited Uber a minute ago. I said an Airbnb, Amazon, Netflix, and we can go on and on and on and on. Okay. Which other spaces do you believe there's room for disruption?
I mean, the climate change space. I mean, my next business is like, we're going to blow the roof off of, the waste management problem and the sort of the garbage crisis through using nature to heal nature. I'll do another podcast with you when we launch. But for me, my next big thing is biomimicry. How do we use nature to heal nature? Because nature's been doing it for itself for millions of years. How do we harness it in a way that's even more impactful, that we can actually fast forward the healing of our planet even faster than it could probably do on it? It could definitely do on its own. So that's my next big invention. So I think there's so much in like looking at the world's problems. Like if you look at the Millennial Development Goals and just understand the global crises, whether it's climate change, whether it's water, whether it's garbage, whether it's plastic, whether it's mosquitoes, whether it's, there's so many, whether, like all these different challenges, whether it's what's going on with coral, like, just like all the industries need a complete, like
makeover,
updating and disruption. Right. So I think it's endless, it's endless. So it's people like, well, every industry's been taken. No. It's just now, again, taking a beginner's mind and saying like, okay, if I'm walking into my home, what can be more efficient? What can be better? What can be more thoughtful? What can be more sustainable? What can be more, there's just so much that can be made so much more efficiently that we're not even thinking about because we haven't questioned it yet. So
I love what you just finished saying, taking a beginner's mind. How are you able to maintain a beginner's mind when you have accumulated so many accolades and successes? How is it that you don't allow your ego to interfere with the beginner's mind?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I know anything, honestly. And I think when people ask me like a question, I just share my own experience, but I don't share like what I know to be true, because that's just to my own interpretation. So I think it's just really about sharing my experience in my past and then just being like super curious all the time as to what can we uncover even further, even deeper, because that's actually the fun in the world, is to question and to actually get new insights. It's not like I know everything. I'm not going to change. You can't change me. That is the most sad, boring life, versus like, wow, every single thing is new. Every single thing is such an experiment that I can totally experiment with this experiment. Like that's a much more fun way of living, I think.
I love it. You come from very traditional cultures, Indian culture, Japanese culture. I'm Hispanic, very traditional cultures. We are not used to questioning things. Yet your parents were very open-minded, very liberal thinking, very, very adaptable to change and to continue changes. And that's a space that I love. I love curiosity. I love that attention.
No, they were also very traditional when it came to like money and relationships and owning your home and like the very traditional, and like like getting married before you have all the things like, but
how do you marry both? How do you marry both in today's society? Because I think there's a disruption, but there's also a sense of necessity to maintain some of those traditional beliefs. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think ancient practices are so key. I love Buddhism, the idea that, well-being is a choice and there is a path to well-being. If you've gone through suffering, like there is that path. So like, I believe like those teachings are super powerful and potent today. So 100%. Yeah. Like I love the idea of like bringing tradition and new way of thinking together. And how do you take like have a beginner's mind with the understanding of what has been done in the past, without being like, that's the truth, that's just what was done in the past. That's not what's the only way. That's
yeah,
it.
it's just what was done in the past. I love that. I love that analogy. You know, something that I'm very passionate about, and it's actually how I discovered you very early on, and that was in Mind Valley. I'm very passionate about the personal development space. You know, I truly believe that we need a makeover, a complete disruption in the education system, that we need to empower the younger generation to be more.
Yes.
They're very open-minded about ideas. They're very open-minded about trying new things. They're lacking the experience and they're lacking the wisdom. Okay. And there's almost like a gap between generations, you know, your parents and your generation, right? There's a gap there. How do we bring them together to where the ideas are embraced, welcome, and they become a conversation piece that allows a change to take change for future generations? How do we do that?
So can you ask the question one more time?
Are we able to close that gap, okay, to allow the ideas to become a conversation piece?
Yeah.
Okay, integrated to welcome the ideas without rejection, without.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the solution for politics? I mean, like, you know, people decide that this is the way it is. This is my vision. This is my red state, and this is my blue state. And you're crazy if you don't believe exactly. And that to me, both sides are not living in their authentic, heart-centered, you know, truths. Like they're just operating from a place of fear and of the known. But like the known is actually like a showpiece that you don't know anything. By saying I know something is actually the opposite of truth, because truth is in a constant seeking, questioning, you know, learning, figuring out. And I just think that if everyone can get back to the space of having that beginner's mind where we're just like, hey, like I want to sit across from you and learn from you. Like, wow, Republican, or wow, Democrat, like, you know, wow, libertarian, like, tell me what you're thinking, where you're coming from. Wow, that actually makes sense. Like, I'm so glad I sat down and had this conversation with you. Wow, you pro-life. Wow, you're pro-choice. Wow, I so understand both sides. Like, wow, you know, like there really is nuance to both sides. And if we're just willing to listen and question our own beliefs, like that is the scariest thing, I think, questioning our own beliefs, because like that's kept us going and in this body and in our safety by through our beliefs. But I like, you know, that picture constantly appears in my head, like your comfort zone where the magic happens, like your comfort zone where the magic happens. Like when we're living in our comfort zone, it's just, it's a kind of like perceived safety, but it's actually, it's not, to me, that's a fear state.
Sure.
Versus
it's a hideaway. It's a hideaway.
It's an unempowered state versus feeling so confident to march, or just able and down to march into the unknown. That to me is a powerful state, and we're all working towards that. For me, in my own process, right in this moment, like I'm in the baby making in this space, and I've been looking for certainty for a while. Then I finally discovered, like, you know, I had questions like, do I even want a second kid? And that was buried deep inside. And now it's like, well, maybe I don't, and maybe I do. And it's okay to rest in between both. Like neither of them are right. It's all possible to be okay to exist all at once. And so it's in the questioning where actually I find the most comfort and safety, actually.
I love it. I love it. What projects are you working on today?
Well, we're building Tushy. You know, Tushy is on a rocket ship right now. I feel very lucky to have the leadership team that I have and the team that I have to really drive this business forward. I get to really be in my zone of genius and be in the creative space. And I have an incredible CEO, CMO, COO, and team to really, you know, drive the business forward in an incredible way. You know, I have a new book coming out. It's called Heart Wisdom. And it's just an accumulation of a lot of just, you know, things I've learned over the last several years and coming from my heart. And so it's Heart Wisdom, and just a book of affirmations that have the potential to change your frequency, which will then change your life. And then I'm working on my new company, which is called Hero Technologies, and that is, stay tuned.
Love it. Where can people find you, Miki?
They can always DM me on Insta, just at Miki Agrawal. They can also, if you want to get a free access to my free 52 moves, where I have like 52 disruptive moves. If you just subscribe to my mikiagrawal.com subscribe page, then you can get access. Every week I'll send you a disruptive move to take in your life and in your business that will really kind of help you really think about your life and business in a different way. So a disruptive way. So I would encourage you to check out, subscribe to mikiagrawal.com's the 52 moves there. And then check out my book, Disrupt or Do Cool Shit. And of course, Tushy, hellotushy.com. There's all the things, but you can find all of it on mikiagrawal.com.
And all that information will be available in the show notes. Miki Agrawal, disruptor, an incredible human being. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much.